So I have a bone to pick with my math education, having felt like I am not good at math my entire life. But Dr. Theodore Sagoon, a UCLA teacher educator and a widely published academic who has twice been appointed to California's Mathematics Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee, a fancy title for those who get to decide what math instruction should look like in the K-12 classroom, teaches us today that a culturally responsive math classroom is one that sees every child as capable in math. Because the teacher who works to build a trusting and safe relationship with a student, who conducts a classroom where most of the instruction is based on students responding to high-level questions that the teacher poses versus just constant lecturing, and where the process of taking the time to solve a big problem is more important than solving for the right answer within the classroom, is the priority in a culturally responsive mathematics classroom. And my good friend and colleague for over 10 years reminds us that culturally responsive instruction is about prioritizing relationships between mathematical concepts and between teams of people or students working together to solve a problem. This episode will expand what our community believes about math education and is for any parent wishing to better support critical thinking in math. Let's take a listen. Dr. Theodore Sagoon is an educator, researcher, and teacher educator in UCLA's Center X program, where he has worked with pre-service teachers in the teacher education program. He is the co-author of Equity Moves to Support Multilingual Learners in Mathematics and Science Grades K through 8, is a former classroom teacher and associate director of the UCLA Mathematics Project. He has trained countless in-service and pre-service teachers to center student thinking in math and culturally relevant practices. And at the state level, Theodore has twice been appointed to California's Mathematics Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee in 2012 and again in 2020, helping to shape the direction of math education for millions of students across the state of California. Folks, I would love and am so excited to welcome both my colleague and my dear friend for the last 10 years in education, Dr. Theodore Sagoon. Theodore, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. How are you this
Good
morning?
morning.
How are you?
Um, Approximately caffeinated, so waking
Approximate.
up.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Sounds good. I've already had 2 cups this morning, so I'm done. I think I'm done.
Mm,
Um,
that's unfortunate.
but
I'll drink. I'll drink for you.
well, Dr. Sagoon, Theodore, today we're obviously talking about mathematics instruction, and really what I'm hoping we will be able to just sort of help, our community, the parents in our community, our Asian community, really understand what a rich and challenging math classroom actually looks like. And I'm really emphasizing actually because I believe historically math instruction has really been positioned as something that's more didactic in nature, like a teacher talking and the students just sort of listening, passively listening, and they're listening to the step-by-step instructions that the teacher is giving them. But today, I know that you will be painting a very different picture for us when it comes to rigorous mathematics instruction, and for that, I am so grateful. But Theodore, I would love to just share with the audience, give the audience an idea of just sort of your upbringing and your work in education as it currently is. And so I'm wondering if you would be willing to share with us, how did your upbringing really shape your earliest ideas of math success?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's
Mhm.
a tall order and ask to be able to talk about some of these ideas that are going to be pertinent to our students. I personally grew up in the San Gabriel Valley here in California. And a lot of the friends that I grew up with were first generation kids, uh, primarily Chinese and Vietnamese.
Mm,
Um, and the math success for us was just, for the most part, defined as how fast you can solve problems
yeah,
and what your grade was on your
yeah,
report card or on the test,
yeah.
and whether you were placed in the higher tracks of math class, if you were in an algebra honors class or a math class that had the word honors come after it.
Mm,
Um, for me, what also shaped my earliest ideas of math success were all the endless array of time tests that I experienced. I would attach the word trauma to that. We were doing a lot of time tests. I think they were
yeah,
called math busters, and we had to do a bunch of arithmetic um, in like a minute or a few minutes, or complete as many problems as we could in a couple of minutes or like 3 minutes.
yeah.
In terms of math achievement, a huge emphasis was on how smart people were. Um, but I'm putting that in quotations, how smart
Yeah,
you were.
yeah,
Um, it also meant regurgitating a lot of problems out of the book or worksheets, any workbook that um, was distributed to us. Um, growing up, a lot of my friends went to Saturday school or Chinese school, or even got a lot of tutorial sessions. Um, so it just seemed more natural to devote more math time, or more time to math. School achievement was up to someone's smartness, again in
yeah,
quotation marks.
yeah,
Um, so ultimately, a lot of my experience reduced math to just a bunch of problems to be solved out of a book or a textbook or worksheet.
yeah.
And these experiences were intended to set kids up for academic success.
Yeah, yeah, that so resonates with my own experience as a young student. Just time math tests, countless worksheets and workbooks. And my guess is that that is really likely resonating with, folks in our generation. Like, this is what defined mathematics instruction. It was like one way to solve that one problem as fast as you could, and whoever could do that in as fast of a timetable as possible was like the quote unquote smartest kid. When it came to math instruction, I imagine that that really sort of embedded into you a specific like messaging. And so here I'm leading into the next question. What sort of messages did you receive about math success and intelligence in your own family or your own broader community when it came to math?
I think the messages about math and success, well, I would say that they weren't always consistent. That there were differing messages, but in some regards, on one hand, math success and intelligence were definitely closely related because it boiled down to whether you had the math gene or not, whether you were, again, in quotation marks, you had that mathematical smartness or not, um, which also meant that you could persevere through just working on a ton of problems out of textbooks or worksheets.
Yeah.
Um, this view of math and intelligence were um, suggested that math smartness in quotation marks is static, um, because you either had the math gene or you didn't. And that's really, really problematic because it's a fixed view of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But in other places, math success and intelligence, at least the way that it was being communicated, maybe more for me at home, personally, at home through my parents, um, that success or intelligence or smartness could be garnered through hard work and perseverance.
Mm.
Um, which I again kind of related to the first perspective, still meant that you had to solve a lot of problems, regardless of whether you understood them or not. And that's what made you successful. But I think ultimately these messages that I received may not necessarily have been the most productive or helpful for young people,
Mm,
at least as I think about them in retrospect.
yeah.
Because in one view and on one hand, there's that fixed view of intelligence, and you just have to do a bunch of math problems. Um, However, we didn't get the message that math is supposed to make sense, and it's supposed to be coherent. That math topics are supposed to build and connect on each other.
Yeah.
That there's supposed to be reasoning and sense making in math.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it wasn't too often that we heard math learning is about sense making and recognizing connections between math ideas. So I guess maybe just as an example, like if I'm able to solve a problem like 5 times 12, um, which we can do in a handful of different ways, a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Um, I could do 5 times 12 and think about the different ways of getting to the answer of 60. I should also, because of recognizing mathematical relationships, engage with 5 times 24. So if 5 times 12 is 60, then 5 times 24 and thinking about the relationships with the numbers
Mm,
could get me to 120. Again, using a lot of different strategies,
yeah.
but essentially by looking at the relationships between the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love, really appreciate that example. I just love how you use the word, the relationship between the numbers and how you can solve that one problem in a very, in a multiple different ways. That significantly contrasts my understanding, the way that I was taught math, because 12 times 5, like there was one way to get to that. And I had to show that on paper. And as you're sharing more about your background, I'm realizing you and I had a very sort of similar math upbringing, if you will. Like a lot of what you're sharing really resonates. And I'm giving folks a preview because we're going to talk more about culturally responsive math instruction, but this really contrasts my understanding, at least, in the way that I've learned from you, what a rigorous, culturally responsive sort of math classroom looks like, feels like, and sounds like from a student's perspective. What drew you, like how did you even start thinking about math in this way?
Well, I was a math major.
Oh, that
I was
helps.
actually I was actually drawn to math because after a while and through my experiences, you're able to recognize the connections in the content.
Okay.
Like for example, connections, see the coherence from topics like fractions to algebra to calculus.
Mm,
You recognize the relationships and patterns, and you appreciate how mathematics is actually supposed to make sense from a positionality standpoint and identity standpoint, especially sticking around San Gabriel Valley um, uh, throughout high school and undergrad. I was continued to be viewed as the math guy when
mm,
I tutored at my former high school.
okay.
At the time, I was also coaching a lot of basketball, and um, that is still a huge part of my identity.
Mm,
And it made sense to venture into teaching where I saw the space as fulfilling in different ways, being able to work with young people, and which I got that from both tutoring and coaching,
okay.
um, and also like engaging with them and something that's supposed to make sense and something that you find the beauty in something that's supposed to make sense and sharing those experiences with them.
Yeah.
But it did take a while to focus on that part that you were mentioning around culturally responsive teaching because I entered the teaching field at the height of our standardized testing in California in the mid 2000s.
Yeah. Same.
Very heavily, um, very much heavily pushing on selected response, bubbling in answers in those tests. But I swear I was convinced that I could get students to perform because in a way I actually did get them to perform.
Hmm.
I got the highest test scores in my school and my district in geometry, algebra, and the math that we considered to be pre-algebra at that time.
Okay.
Um, but I will say I was able to do that by emphasizing conceptual understanding and sense making in math because that's what I was clamoring for. Those were the experiences that where math made sense for me, and I wanted to use that approach with my students.
Mm.
Even though for the most part, I never necessarily experienced that in my K-12 experience.
Yeah.
Um, it took me a while to focus on equity and culturally being culturally responsive. Um, especially when I started to recognize that most programs or curricula that were out there that were available to me weren't necessarily made for my kids.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
Especially when it came time to testing, we would commonly tell our students, our maybe like our newly immigrated students to just do your best. Um, while they were engaging with a test that wasn't in a language that they could
Oh,
read or engage with.
okay.
So the tests themselves didn't reflect my students' actual understanding or their conceptual understanding of the math because much of the content itself was already narrow in scope and the math learning that it actually intended to measure. So for me, I started recognizing that most of the content that was out there, like programs or worksheets, were created maybe for a more upper middle class group of students,
Mm.
with contexts that were more accessible to Western or upper middle class group of kids. Um, the context and the pre-made math problems and the content that I was given, the programs that I was given, didn't really make sense for my students. Which I need to emphasize, this brought up the issue of teaching out of the text as really, really problematic.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of us as teachers still do this, right? We just take the program that we're given
Yeah.
because there's a lot of pressures and there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot on our plates.
Yeah.
And then we just teach out of the text, out of necessity.
Yeah.
But in sharing that part of my experience, I really, really caution listeners, I suppose. I really, really caution the listeners. Because what I want to emphasize is there was nothing wrong with my students.
Yeah.
It didn't mean that um, it meant that I think for them, it just meant that the standard math word problem that they would get out of a textbook
Yeah.
or a worksheet was more accessible to other kids.
Yeah.
So this seemed to suggest to a lot of people that whoever didn't understand these contexts were, uh, needing remediation or that they were deficient,
Yeah.
or that they're like culturally lacking.
Yeah.
I began to think about how to make word problems and the context of word problems more related to my kids, and that maybe framing them in contexts that were more interesting to my students,
Mm.
maybe to swap out some of these word problems out of
Yeah.
these textbooks.
Yeah.
So I ultimately began using them less,
Yeah.
those word problems or those textbooks themselves.
Could I share an example? Because that is so resonating with my own teaching experience. I taught in South LA. And Theodore, when you say that the curriculum was written for, upper middle class kids, I remember I taught second grade. It was my second year of, no, I'm sorry, my first year of teaching, and there was a word problem about they had to add up a football score. And so my students, in their context, football is soccer and it's a single point, right? And it didn't even dawn on me as someone who grew up in like a middle class suburb that I would actually have to explain that difference between American football and the football that they understood. And the point difference. And so, it's something if a teacher is not attuned to who the kids are in their classroom, which clearly I was not at that time, you know, that is just one extra hurdle that our students or students who do not reflect the audience that the curriculum writers had intended to write it for. That's just one extra step that as a teacher I have to explain. And if the teacher does not explain that, then it could appear, arguably, it appears that our students are performing at a deficit or are deficient, when in fact that is not the case. And so when you were sharing that, I'm sorry I cut you off, but it sparked this memory of mine that I, did not realize the error of my way until after. So,
Yeah, so I think to build off of your experience too and your point, um, part of the challenge is that for our kids, um, it signals to them that the problems that they're engaging with out of these textbooks or worksheets
mhm,
that they're not created for them.
yeah,
It signals to our students that
that they're not smart or
these
even.
that they're not smart
Yeah,
or that the math problems are created for a more upper middle class
right.
group of kids. And then for the teachers, there's that extra hurdle of how do I take the content that I'm supposed to engage
Yeah,
my students with, especially as related to things like standards, and make them more accessible and more relevant
yeah,
to my students.
yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes that can be a lift on a teacher's part. And to your point earlier, oftentimes we don't give teachers time to do so. They have to do it out of their own free time, go through and review and adapt as needed. Um, Theodore, I'm wondering if we could move into the myth of the natural math genius. Natural math genius, the model minority. And you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago about the model minority. For our audience at a very high level, what exactly is the model minority myth?
The model minority myth is an outdated, racially discriminatory perspective
Yes.
that views people of Asian, Pacific Islander descent as reducing them to hardworking, successful, and high achieving.
Yes.
And it's a problematic view because um, of what it also implicitly or explicitly says about other minority groups. That it typically paints um, black and brown people as problem minority groups, which
Yeah.
is extremely problematic
Yeah.
in our uh, social and political climate.
Yeah.
But there's also so much more I could say about that.
Yeah.
Um,
So we're, as a group,
that
you're saying that we're pitted against other minority groups.
right,
These
um,
conceptions, these broad generalizations, are
right,
essentially used to shame other communities,
right, or to
um,
shame us
or to
when
shame us. Yep.
in math, at least speaking to my experiences and the experiences of a lot of the friends I had growing up, um, many of whom I still talk to, my basketball buddies, that if you weren't in that algebra honors class, then, oh, I must not be good at math.
Mm,
Um,
yep.
if I didn't get a chance to take calculus uh, by the time that I was a senior in high school,
Yeah.
then I don't fit that model minority
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Or if I struggled in math sometime in college, then I don't fit this this notion of a model
Yeah.
minority. And it's really problematic because these people that I have in mind are engineers, accountants, and bookkeepers, people
Mm,
who do math on a day-to-day basis.
yeah.
But um, their negative experiences in math and growing up uh, feeling as if they had to perform well in a math class and not experiencing whatever that high achievement or performance was supposed to be,
Hmm.
um, led them to develop negative perceptions of themselves, and
Yeah.
they developed a negative identity
Yeah.
as a learner and doer of math.
Yeah. And that becomes part of the narrative, right? I'm putting my therapist hat on, not that I am a therapist, but like, as a recipient of, I know that that becomes part of what you say to yourself. And that becomes a limiting narrative as you pursue, you know, beyond. And so, the model minority myth is problematic for so many different reasons. One, again, it pits us against other groups, and two, it's used to, we feel shame when we can't rise to, again, this myth. I'm curious to know if we could move into culturally responsive math instruction. Does this mean that a teacher goes in with a list of like, here's all the AAPI characteristics? And now I'm just going to broadly apply it to this group of Asian students. When you say culturally responsive, this suggests rigorous classroom instruction, and a teacher is developing critical thinking skills, creativity, collaboration, communication, all at the same time inside a classroom that is, again, responsive to the students who are sitting in front of him or her.
I'm thinking about this two ways that you could reframe that question without the word rigor in there, but I could
Oh,
also answer it.
okay.
I could also try to answer it to attend to that word rigor.
Okay.
But here it goes.
Okay, so
So
I'll
culture,
take that word out then.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Why should I take that word out?
because rigor is connected to the learner, and rigor for you is not the same as rigor for me,
Oh, okay.
which is why we have to differentiate instruction.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
So like
Fair,
the
fair.
kinds of
Okay.
problems that I can pose to you,
Yeah.
we might start with the same base problem, but to push your thinking and to push my thinking, my follow-up questions could be different for different
Gotcha.
kids,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Like thinking about like where they are and how to build on.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Back in.
I think a culturally responsive math classroom, um, I think for me is a healthy classroom where students are given opportunities on a daily basis to check in with adults and educators and their teachers. Um, Students are always given opportunities to share how they're doing and how they're feeling. So this again goes beyond just
This is
mathematics
even
or the
before
concept
math.
itself,
Yeah. Yeah.
even before the math. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Um, a healthy classroom is where students are given attention and care, where we're always engaging with them
Mm-hmm.
or quote unquote monitoring them,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
they're doing emotionally, physically, um, which it also gives us opportunities to check in with them about like what they're bringing every day and what their understanding might be. Like those are spaces to figure out what they know about math.
Wow.
It's also an opportunity to support their growth as people, as young people. And when I say growth, I'm not just talking about, again, their math understanding or their academic knowledge, but more thinking about the student holistically.
Yeah.
Um, a
Can
healthy, responsive classroom, sure.
I just sort of, you're sort of blowing my mind right now because we haven't even started talking about math instruction, and you are describing what a culturally responsive mathematics classroom might feel like. And we're talking about it, to me at least, it sounds like you're really working to establish a trusting relationship with your students. Like that comes actually before the instruction. When you're paying attention, like you said, holistically to the student, what's happening to you today, what happened to you yesterday, tell me about something that you're excited about, or et cetera. You're really invested in getting to know the student before you even begin instruction, which people might think, Theodore, like is like, well, of course you're a teacher. All teachers have trusting relationships with kids. Like, why would you ever have to instruct that? Like, I'm just like thinking about the listener who may not be embedded in the teaching field like you and I.
And I think that we can, to build off of that too, I
Yeah.
think we can definitely maybe turn our um, notion of instruction on its head
Mm.
and uh, include this notion of like checking in with kids and making sure that they are healthy, whole people.
Mm,
And if they're not, figuring out ways of supporting them um, with services that
wow.
could support them with their needs.
So you're treating them like a
Um,
human,
like totally treating them like a
treating
human
them
being.
like a treating them like a human.
So, part of, I think, this idea of having a responsive math classroom is,
Yeah.
um, you know, being able to recognize students' experiences and
Mm,
their identities and affirming those and supporting them to recognize that who they are, what they bring are
mhm,
valued.
mhm.
Their languages, their cultures, their out of school experiences, all of those things are valued because that's who they are.
Yeah.
And part of our work is to build on who they are and support their growth as human beings.
Mm,
So these spaces are also where we give them opportunities to engage in diverse learning experiences, to dig deeper about themselves, as well as to understand and affirm the experiences of others. So school gives me the opportunity to be able to reflect on who I am as a young person, but also to get to know other people
wow.
in my classroom.
Wow. This is all happening in the math classroom. This is what we're talking about today. Like all of what you just said happens in a math classroom, which is not the way I generally felt inside of my math classroom. I pulled out my notebook
Right,
and I started taking notes. Theodore, I'm wondering, and sorry,
right.
was there more that you wanted to share?
Oh, totally. Yeah,
Wow.
and there's nothing wrong with necessarily that view of math class as a space where I take out my
Mm,
notes to
mm.
record my ideas. There's definitely a space for that.
That's part of it.
Um,
Yes.
that's part of it,
Yes.
yeah. But with a healthy, responsive classroom, as a teacher, I'm thinking about all of the different ways that I could get um, students to participate, all of the different ways that I could get them to share a
Mm,
bit about themselves, but also definitely their mathematical ideas, right? Again, now we're getting into the math.
okay.
Maybe I'm thinking about warm-ups or different problem-solving activities or number sense and reasoning routines where students not only get to participate in different ways or um, offering them opportunities to share how they're thinking about the math, but those are also offer spaces to have the students check in not just with me, but with each other.
Mm,
I'm also thinking about, as a teacher, activities where they get to talk to one another and describe what they've learned and how they're doing. Again, not just with the math, right, with their understanding, but
mhm.
there's definitely opportunities for them to check in with, hey, what strategy did you use? And let's compare strategies or which strategy could we use moving forward?
Wow.
Um, Students can engage in these activities, which permits the teacher to work with them in different ways, especially like as teachers walk around the classroom and listen to students' ideas if they're working in pairs or in groups. Um, Again, the use of warm-ups or number sense and reasoning routines or problem solving with kids in different ways, engaging students with math activities that are conducive to kids explaining and expressing their ideas.
Mhm.
These are just helpful for teachers to um, engage with how students are doing, right? Socially and emotionally, but as well as what their reasoning is, what their mathematical thinking is, which taking all of that into account, maybe even thinking of all of that as like data, or maybe even thinking of all of that as like you know, information that I'm garnering from the kids.
Mm.
That helps me to decide what I do next in my instruction.
Can I could I just point something out really quickly for our listeners? One word, Theodore, that you keep using is offer. and you're offering students different opportunities to engage with one another, to engage with you as the instructor. And this is really turning my understanding of the math instruction on its head, because when I experience math instruction, and again, I recognize, yes, like you said, there's a place for the notebook, but it was always pull out the notebook, copy the notes down, and do 2 practice problems, and then move on to, an independent worksheet. But
Oh, I got 10 practice problems, but yeah,
oh,
keep going.
oh, so now we're competing. Okay. So
Yes.
so but what I think it's really interesting that you're using the word offer, because when I think of someone offering me something, I'm not being forced to go through the lesson. I'm being given an opportunity to engage with the material. That requires a different level of, I don't know if it's the word is discipline, but a different level of trust, maybe, that you are offering the student. Like, I trust you to engage in this material. I trust you to engage with your peer. I trust you to engage with me, versus sit down, everyone take out your notes and do the exact same notes and do the practice problems together using this one methodology. There's a lot
Yes.
of choice, there's a lot of listening on the instructor's part, there's a lot of dialogue that happens in the classroom, a lot of communication. And to your point, not only is the instructor collecting data on like the actual math, but the instructor is also collecting data on the emotional tenor of the student, the interests of the students, and the instructor is using that information to guide his or her next steps in the classroom. So we're talking a lot about just talking like between students and between the instructor and students. Is it okay if we move into productive struggle? I would really love for folks to understand, what exactly is productive struggle and why is that important in math? Because, I always thought that there was one way to solve a problem. And if you didn't do it, then you didn't get 100%. If you didn't follow the steps. Could you share with the audience what exactly is productive struggle and why is that important in math?
Oh boy. Wow. So we could sit here for hours talking about why productive struggle is important
Well, we got
as a
like
as
10
a
minutes.
life as a lifelong skill. But
As a
for
lifelong skill. I love that. Tell us why. Tell us why that is the case.
so for me, productive struggle in the math space in the math class is this idea of like grappling with a problem,
Mm,
right? Like really thinking hard about it,
yeah.
grappling with a problem, reflecting on it, again, thinking about um, how to solve it in different ways, perhaps getting input from others, um, or considering new information that you need to solve the problem, and really sitting with it until you come up with a reasonable answer.
Mm.
Um, that I would argue is a lifelong skill.
Oh, for sure.
It's something that we could definitely take with us outside of the math classroom space.
I mean, I
Um,
imagine that's what happens in workplaces, right? When you're working with your team to solve, you're developing a product or what have you, you have to sit with a group of people and struggle with the problem at hand in order to produce a result. Is the res
Totally.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna add to that. Um, and it suggests that problems aren't necessarily solved instantaneously, whatever that even means, right? That they're not solved immediately, that it's okay to sit with a problem for a while. And it brings meaning to the experience when you're able to arrive at a solution, to use your metaphor with a team of people.
Mm,
Um, it just makes the experience more meaningful.
yeah. So,
For
oh, I was going to say, so the goal isn't necessarily to get the right answer. Is that
I
what the
think ma-
is that what students are aiming to do? Like, I'm going to get the right, like 2 plus 2 equals 4. I'm going to get to that answer.
I think mathematics in general is always concerned with uh, accuracy. But what we're also trying to get young people to do in math classrooms is to reason and make sense,
Mm,
right? So there's a tension between those two things, and those two things um, don't need to be divorced of each other.
yeah.
But we're definitely trying to encourage young people to sit and grapple and reason and make sense and share their thinking with others. This
Yeah.
idea of productive struggle, for teachers, I connect it to the standards of mathematical practice, which are supposed to be like these dispositions um, that we're trying to cultivate in students, um, especially in the K-12 space. Although I'll always argue that these things are lifelong skills too. Um, I think of productive struggle as making sense of a problem and persevere in solving them. I think that these dispositions aren't just limited to young people in K-12 schooling, that they're useful for beyond.
Mm, absolutely. And I'm curious to know that, if I'm a parent at home, how would you recommend as a teacher if I wanted to encourage productive struggle in my own home when it comes to math? What are some things that I could do at home right now to really encourage that disposition?
Sure. I think in one view, I would argue that it's not just limited to math too.
Mm,
But this notion of productive struggle um, could be difficult for families or parents at times.
yeah,
And maybe for,
yeah,
admittedly, for folks in our field, for teachers as well,
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
because we feel like it's our job to solve problems for young people.
yeah.
That's what we do as adults.
So I'm thinking of maybe like one concrete strategy that parents could do when it came to math or like a math worksheet, right, that they have to complete for homework is to actually ask your child, how did you complete that? Or what is the strategy that you'll use? And have them actually recount to you how they solved that math problem. That could be, an isolated strategy that parents use. It also, like, I'm just sort of thinking of myself, like it almost feels like I have to also prepare myself as someone who admittedly is like, I just need the problem to be solved.
Right.
Like, we got 20 minutes
I
to
don't
finish
I don't
this.
have time
I
for
don't have time for
right.
this. It's almost like I have to prepare myself and permit
Totally.
myself to be okay with that. And
Absolutely.
maybe part of this is what you shared earlier about a responsive math classroom is taking time to just talk to my kid and
Yeah.
building a relationship with my kid. How was your school day? I mean, parents know this, right? Like this is sort of a common sort of this is what we ask when they come home from school, but really being intentional about getting curious or asking questions, asking how was your day before even moving into the actual math worksheet that they have to complete. That is part of productive
Hmm.
struggle because you're creating an environment that feels safe for your
Hmm.
child. And what we
Totally.
really want to aim to do as both a teacher and as a parent is for our kids to feel safe in our presence because when they approach that math problem, that math word problem that is not relevant.
Hmm.
Oh God, might have to take that out. All math problems are relevant that come home from school. When they sit down to solve that problem, when your child sits down to solve that problem, you have to prepare yourself to not
Hmm.
like, oh, I got to solve the problem. You
Right.
have to spend time building a relationship and then because you're creating a safe environment for them to be able to struggle.
Hmm.
And it's really
Yeah.
about being okay with the struggle, being okay with the failure even
Totally.
of getting to that, quote unquote wrong. I think you said, it's an inaccurate, answer
Hmm.
to the math problem.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's definitely uh, puts us in a space where we have to develop new mental models for how
oh,
to work with young people.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Again, prepping yourself for that,
yeah,
I think is really important
yeah,
because um, reminding ourselves that it's not our job to do the work for kids is part of the challenge, especially if we were raised in an environment and if that was a huge part of our experience, right?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know, my parents are going to help me with my homework or and help me to do it in an hour, or I was going to get these questions answered by the tutor. Uh,
Yeah.
Taking the stance that it's not our job to do the work for kids.
Yeah.
So in lieu of that, just be curious. Uh, you know, ask a lot of questions.
Mm.
If they don't know how to start the problem, ask what do you know,
Yeah.
or what's going to be helpful for you to get started,
Yeah.
or is there a picture or a model that can help you to solve the problem? Is there a picture or that you could draw to help you to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Or even asking, hey, what is the problem asking you to do?
Yeah.
And if they're like, let's say in the middle of the problem, if they're stuck, ask, hey, what could you do next? Or is there another problem that you already did previously that could help you out, or that you can compare your strategy to? What other strategies might be helpful?
Mm.
And then if they're done, if they say that they're done, always ask, how did you solve that? Don't just stop there and say
Okay.
good job and go play. Ask, how did you solve that?
Yeah.
Is there a different way of explaining your ideas? Um, or if they're in a classroom, if you're a teacher, is there another problem that's similar to what you've already solved? That's a question that could be asked by both,
Yeah.
um, I guess, family members, parents, and teachers. But essentially, taking this stance of being curious
Mm.
and continuing to encourage the kids to build on their own ideas.
Yeah. And it sounds like the kids have to do the majority of the talking. Like I just
Oh,
noticed
a
like
thousand percent.
all you did was just ask a line of questions. And
Mhm.
it's like they're the ones that are doing the heavy lift, right? So if we transition into, so let's say, Theodore, I'm a parent. I've really bought into this idea. I want to know that my kid is engaging in productive struggle during the academic day. And I'm not quite sure what type of instruction is actually happening in my kid's school. Are there any questions that a parent can go to a teacher with, a math teacher, to ascertain a better understanding? Is this classroom a classroom that supports student discourse, productive struggle, or is this a classroom that is like 100% didactic, like with the teacher
Sure,
talking the whole time? What are
sure.
questions that teachers or parents can ask?
Well, I would say first, if you have the resources, um, especially the resource of time, um, participate, participate and engage.
You mean go to the
Whether it's
classroom,
go
go
to
to
the
the school.
classroom, go to the school,
Okay.
whether it's back to school night or a family math night, or donut with a principal,
Okay.
participate and engage.
Okay.
Ask questions, as you had mentioned, and share your own ideas. Um, you don't necessarily need to be an expert in teaching and learning and pedagogy
Mm-hmm.
for you just to share some of your experiences. I think as long as we're creating opportunities for teachers and educators to get to know you and one another, and to consider ways of meaningfully engaging with your kids, I think that's all going to be helpful.
So,
But it also
okay.
presents um, opportunities for the teacher to get to know you and your family,
Mm-hmm.
to figure out ways of bridging your quote unquote out of school experiences, your ideas, and connect that to their teaching, which will make the math more meaningful or bring relevance to the math problems that they could engage with in the classroom.
So, if I could share with folks at home, then it sounds like giving the teacher the opportunity to get to know you and your family because that background or that information is context that the teacher is collecting. Like, oh, Lindsay really enjoys soccer and sewing. And so here are some opportunities maybe that I can, as a teacher, write a math problem or, talk about, somehow bring that content into the lesson. So the first thing is to build the relationship with the teacher. I can do this by going to back to school night. I can do this by engaging with the principal, just as long as there's dialogue. Again, there, I love that word dialogue. As long as there's dialogue happening, then these are multiple opportunities for a teacher to get to know you and your family. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that that relationship is the foundation of everything. Any sort of trusting relationship. When it comes to the math instruction, let's say I have a worksheet that comes home. Now, a worksheet could be, you could still engage productive struggle with a worksheet. As a parent, if I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, it's like, my kid brought home the other day, like just like 50, like it was a time math thing that he had to do.
Oh boy.
What would I be look like? What would I, as a parent, what would I be looking for and listening for if I really wanted to confirm that the classroom supports productive struggle?
You could just, you know, um, engage with the teacher about like their pedagogy. But if not, and the majority of us aren't in the education field,
Yeah.
I can always ask just a series of questions about, hey, which problems were similar and why? Which ones were the easiest for you to solve and why? Which problems could you write in your own way?
Yeah.
And can you give some examples?
Yeah.
So they could be working on a worksheet that might have a mundane set of problems, or um, they might not necessarily be, they might be devoid of meaning or sense making, but we could ask a series of questions that could still get them to make sense, explain their reasoning, and justify their ideas.
I see. I see. So as a parent, it's not enough data for, or I can't just assess at face value, like when a worksheet comes home, like, oh God, this teacher is not supporting like cognitive struggle in the classroom. That maybe as a parent, I could go in and start asking questions of my own child. What problems on this, worksheet are similar and why, or is there different ways to solve these problems? And that will give you a really good understanding of what sort of maybe coaching or instruction is happening in the classroom, to some
Sure,
degree, in
sure,
absence of like actually sitting and watching the teacher. Most of
sure.
us as parents, we don't have access to our, our teacher's classroom. We can't just ask, can I go in and watch math instruction?
Right.
Um, it's so, there are ways around you really understanding or ascertaining what type of math classroom your child is, learning in. And if your
Sure.
child is able and willing to answer those questions, it could be reflective of, yes, the type of instruction that's happening in the classroom. If your child is not able to answer that question, I would just say, personally, as a word of caution, as both a teacher and a parent, I wouldn't automatically jump to the conclusion that, oh, the teacher must not be doing this type of instruction, but that maybe your child is a little nervous, answering that
Sure.
question in front of you, or just, for whatever reason doesn't want to answer it from mom or dad.
Mhm.
But that there are ways to, again, assess the type of math classroom that your child is in by just following up and asking questions. That feels like that's the theme of the day. You just need to engage in dialogue,
Sure. Yeah.
to get to know one another. And that is the foundation by which you begin building a very strong, not just instructional relationship, but just a relationship in general. And the key to
Mhm.
culturally responsive mathematics feels like it's just a willingness to humanize, to learn
Sure.
about those who are sitting in front of you and to adapt instruction based on that.
Part of the work too is um, just remembering, being empathetic towards teachers, because They
Yeah.
work really, really hard and
Yeah.
they have a lot on their plates.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because we work intimately with teachers. It's just the reality
Yeah.
of their work. Um, so I'm also trying not to demonize them or antagonize them, knowing that
Mm.
they're doing so much. But for me, what I can control is when my child comes home,
Mm.
I could ask them a series of questions, maybe to get them to push on their ideas a bit and to support them to recognize that I'm trying to encourage them to develop their mathematical ideas. I'm not the one solving the problem for them because it's not my math problems.
Mm.
Like their problems when they're 25 are not necessarily going to be my problems. So I
Yeah.
don't need to solve the problems for them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also just to with regards to the relationship with the teachers, just always opening up avenues for dialogue and discourse around, uh, how is my child doing and how can I continue to be supportive of them and their understanding of math. And when I say understanding, it's their conceptual understanding.
Yeah.
It's their ability to reason and justify and make sense of ideas.
Yeah. It's really, I feel like focusing on the process as much as, the outcome or the quote, the right answer. That's, of course, important. And the process is equally, if not more important, because that's really where you develop those life skills. Theodore, I'm so grateful to you today for this conversation. I'm wondering, is there anything that I didn't ask that maybe you feel compelled to share?
I am excited about a book chapter that's coming out of Rutledge, edited by Connor Warner and Etta Hollins on um,
And these are huge scholars, by the way, in the field. For anyone who doesn't know, I don't know the first author, but I do know Dr. Etta Hollins. So she's a
um,
titan. So
it's going to be titled Imperatives for Mathematics Classroom, Centering Students' Mathematical Thinking, Emphasizing Sense Making, and Engaging in Problem Analysis. And the book is going to be titled Teaching for College and Career Readiness. My work at UCLA is also transitioning. I'm also dabbling in the community college space, uh, working alongside community college professors and instructors around their instruction. So I'm really excited about that.
amazing. Amazing. Well, I'm so grateful to you.
But
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Courage Class. I hope today's conversation gave you a little encouragement and inspiration. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And for extra motivation, tools, and behind the scenes content, sign up for my newsletter. I'd love to share with you more there. See you next time.